What's up you guys, before we go any further, just thought I'd let you know the spider isn't in my shirt, he's right here. So what you guys just saw was probably the #1 thing that most people or most parents dread about letting their child get a tarantula or a snake or something along those lines. They fear it's going to get out and something like that little scenario you just saw may happen. This couldn't be further from the truth if you're keeping your animals properly and you set them up in the correct enclosures. So I'm just going to show you guys a few of the setups that I would recommend keeping these animals in if you want to keep them from escaping. I'll also maybe share a few points that some of you can make if you want to get something like, say, a tarantula or a python or something and your parents won't let you. There are some ways to, I guess, sway their decision based on your part. So usually the main reason parents won't let you get a creepy crawly or a reptile is usually because those animals come with a bit of a stigma, a bit of a reputation, if you will. A lot of it isn't always true, and I mean, yeah, some of it is to an extent, but it's dramatized a lot. I found the best thing you can do is just research. If you research these animals as much as possible and show that you have an extensive knowledge about these animals, and then you can show your parents that, they may be more inclined, they may be more likely to allow you to keep them. Because at the end of the day, most parents don't like getting their kids pets because they have a feeling that their kids are going to get bored with their pet after a few weeks and then the parents are left taking care of it. And most parents aren't going to want to take care of a snake or a spider, so yeah, they kind of need you to show them that you're willing to take on this animal for its full lifespan. And of course, when it comes to things like spiders or scorpions or any sort of creepy crawly, but mainly the spiders, the main fear is it's going to get out and roam around the house and pop up in unexpected places, like you just saw in that little scenario I just made. This honestly has happened to me once before. I have had a tarantula get out. Luckily I found him, but yeah, that was my fault completely. Basically I was cleaning out the enclosure, the phone rang, I answered the phone, was on the phone for quite a while, completely forgot I hadn't clipped the lid down, and that night he was able to push the lid off the tank because it wasn't clipped down, and out he came. And he was out for a couple of days before I found him. Thankfully he was fine, I found him, there was no dramas, but yeah, it was a bit of a scare. Thankfully though, I live alone, so it's no drama to anyone else if one of my animals happen to escape. It's just my problem, which I can deal with. But if you're living with other people, especially if you have your parents, you're still living with your parents, and you want to get something like that, you really don't want them thinking it's got even the slightest chance of escaping, because that alone will stop them allowing you to keep what you want to keep. So do your research on the types of enclosures these animals need and get the correct enclosure. So I'm going to show you just a few examples of some of the enclosures I would recommend for different animals. So for example, with spiders you want to keep them in something where the lid clips down or it has like grooves it slides in, so it cannot be pushed off or slid off the tank, because the tarantulas can be surprisingly strong actually. So you want that too, and you also don't want anything with gaps that are too big for your spider to get through. They're not the most nimble of spiders compared to some others. They've got a pretty fat body, so they're not going to squeeze through overly tiny gaps, but still, you don't want to allow them to have that option. If you're keeping something like a centipede, which I hope you're not if you're a beginner, because they're kind of hard to keep and pretty aggressive and hard to handle, but if you are going to get a centipede, make sure their tank is built like a safe. No gaps, no holes, like air holes obviously, very small ones, but you don't want to leave any cracks between the lid and the side of the tank or anything like that, because centipedes can flatten their body and get through very small gaps if they have to. They're absolute escape artists. So like I've kept tarantulas in, honestly, just these Tupperware containers. Obviously this isn't his actual home, this is just a holding container for him because I just used him in that little scenario I created. But I've kept them in these too, they're like half full of coconut fibre and sphagnum moss, so they have something to burrow in. But these are great because I can drill some holes in the lid that are too small for the spider to get through. It's got locking, like clipped type of lids, so it's not going to escape or anything. So these are great if you want to keep a large collection of tarantulas and you don't want to have lots of large displays, you can just have stuff like that. With display tanks though, you want to maybe get something like a critter keeper, because again their lids clip down, or even like small reptile tanks that are made for small reptiles and invertebrates. They usually have the mesh lids which either clip down or slide in, or they might have sliding doors or something like that. You just want to make sure that the tanks with the sliding doors, the gap between the two sliding doors, is big enough for whatever you're keeping to get through. When you're talking snakes, they're pretty good at escaping as well. Not as good as, say, a spider or something because they're a bit bigger, but they're still pretty good at it. But they're much stronger, so they have the ability to push lids open more so than a spider can. So you want to keep them in proper reptile tanks. Aquariums and fish tanks won't cut it for snakes, they will escape. They'll push the glass lids straight off, or they'll just find a way out, because most fish tanks, the back glass lids have the corners cut off to allow cables to go in and out of the fish tank. Snakes are going to get straight out of that. So you want to get proper reptile tanks. Usually Reptile 1 or Exoterra tanks are pretty good, but any proper reptile tank will be fine. Make sure they have either clips on their doors or locking doors or something like that, just so there's no chance of your snake escaping. So the other option is rack systems. Now you can buy them commercially if you like, but they are kind of expensive. But if you have the money for it, why not do it? They're usually pretty good quality. I make my own. That's basically what this is. So this is essentially just a bookcase with plastic tubs, and I've just made it so the tubs fit perfectly into this shelf. There's about a millimetre gap between the top of the tub and the shelf above it. So the shelf won't exactly get stuck, it'll slide in and out, but it's a very tiny little gap that snakes aren't going to get out. So yeah, that's the other option. I've just drilled holes in the tub too, obviously for oxygen and air circulation. I've got a heat cable running along the back of each shelf, so there is heating involved as well, which is great. These are really good because the snake cannot escape a tub that it's in. If it's sitting in the drawer, it can't push the drawer open. So it's not as urgent with like locks and clips. You slide the drawer in and that's it. It's not going to be able to push the drawer open when it's sitting in it. So I like tubs because they're easy to clean as well. They're easy to access. But if you want displays, I wouldn't go tubs. I'd go an actual terrarium or vivarium of some sort, usually like a reptile tank or something. You can set it up much nicer. These tubs are great. You can keep a large amount of snakes in a small amount of space if you want to be doing that, especially if you're breeding, for example. Like I got my blackhead here in this one. And yeah, I have a bit of everything. I got a lot of tubs, but I also have display terrariums as well as various other little things, like my tarantulas are in little cube tanks. I've got a couple of my tarantulas still in the Tupperware containers because they're a bit smaller and it just suits them better. And yeah, it all works fine because everything either has a lock or clipping down lids, or like these rack systems where they slide in and the snake can't open it once it's in there. But back to my point of trying to convince your parents to let you keep a reptile. Again, they come with a bit of a stigma which most people don't really overlook. So I found the best thing to help with allowing your parents or whoever you're living with to allow you to keep a reptile or an invertebrate of some sort is exposure. Go to reptile shows, go to reptile expos, watch YouTube videos with reptiles. Wink, wink. Subscribe button, by the way. Yeah, it's just all about exposure. You see other people holding reptiles and keeping pet reptiles, and you see how much fun they're having with it, and that they're not as frightening as they appear to be. Sometimes that can change people's mind about them. Like I've met in my life so many people that are afraid of snakes, and then they've seen my snake collection, been reluctant to even come in the room at first, to be honest, because they're surrounded by reptiles. Then I get a few of my smaller, more placid snakes out, and I hold them. They eventually want to hold them because they see how calm they are and they're not that bad. If I'm holding it without any worry in the world, then they mustn't be that bad. And they end up liking them by the end of it, and they end up holding bigger snakes by the end of it. So it's all about exposure, because a lot of people that have a fear of something like snakes and spiders, the fear is just due to lack of education and exposure to these animals. They've only believed the bad reputation that these animals seem to come with, which is vastly exaggerated most of the time. So once these people see that, oh, they're not actually that bad, and half the stuff I thought I was afraid of them for is not actually even true, they're okay with it. So that, and the maintenance side. Your parents say no to you for getting a snake or a spider, but they're fine with a cat or a dog or something. That's just because the cat and dog is cute and fluffy and the snake isn't. But if you really want the snake and not the cat and dog, and they're saying no to that, but yes to the cat and dog, snakes cost virtually nothing to upkeep and maintain. Their general maintenance and workload is absolutely minimal. How much money does a dog and a cat cost per year with daily or twice a daily sort of feeding, veterinary bills, toys, grooming equipment, you know, all that sort of stuff? Then the general maintenance, they eat a lot, so they crap a lot. They've got to be walked and played with and brushed and all sorts of stuff. Which, I mean, that's great. If you love your dog, it's fun doing all that stuff. But if you really want a snake and your parents would prefer you to get something that's a little more cuter and fluffier, but you want the snake or the spider even, the spider and snake doesn't come with a huge ongoing price tag every week with its upkeep and maintenance. Its general workload is minimal. Snakes eat once a week or once every 2 weeks, so they crap once a week. Not much cleaning involved there. You can use newspaper as a bedding if you're absolutely on a budget, which is basically free. Other than that, they need a heat cable, which is absolute minimal cost, and that's it. UV light's not necessary for most pythons, with the exception of diamond pythons, of course, so you don't even need to worry about that. It's really the only thing you're plugging in for your snake, unless you have a diamond python, is a heat cable or a heat mat or a heat lamp, depending on your setup. And that's really it. You don't have to walk them, you don't have to brush them, you don't have to show them affection and play with them all the time. You can go away for a week and leave them and not worry about them. As long as they have water and their cage is clean, they're fine. And then when you go to the invertebrates, it's even less maintenance. They have a cricket once a week, or they can have a cricket once every 2-3 weeks. They don't eat often. Small little tank, maybe a little heat pad during the colder times of the year. That's it. And as long as you mist them down accordingly, I mean, it depends what exact invertebrate you're keeping and where it's from. Some like higher humidity than others, but for those that require humidity, you might just have to mist the enclosure down once a week or something like that, depending on the setup you have. And that's it. They don't, again, need any affection or maintenance. You might change their substrate once a month or once every 2 months when it starts looking a bit gross. That's it. Other than that, you can just ignore them basically. They don't really need any care other than that. Anyways guys, that's just my personal advice and opinion on the matter. I mean, you might go about it a different way. That's just what I think is the best way to go about convincing whoever you live with, whether it's roommates or friends or parents, to let you get a reptile. I think that's the best way to go about it. I hope this video was helpful to anyone. And as I was saying, snakes are amazing pets, so I recommend anyone get one who wants one. And you'd be insane if you don't, because they are awesome. Before I get out of here guys, also don't forget to like and subscribe. Instagram's down below, follow me there if you like. See you guys in the next one. Bye bye.